Why did the gunshot sound louder than thunder? It cracked through the basement armory like a lightning strike caught in metal walls, echoing back until even silence seemed afraid to return. The smell of cordite and iron filled the air, a metallic fog wrapping around the lifeless body slumped against cold concrete. Blood sprayed in a fan, stark red against gray. The kind of sight that clings to memory like smoke in clothing. Sarah Mitchell didn't move. Her hand held steady on the pistol, her breathing already slowed. Years of training disguised in the mask of an ordinary technician. To anyone else, she was just another face behind the weapons benches, unremarkable, forgettable. The kind of woman who could vanish in a crowd not because she wanted to, but because everyone let her. Only now the illusion cracked. Upstairs, Fort Garrison roared with life. Trucks growled across tarmac, radios crackled with clipped orders, boots pounded hallways in rehearsed rhythms of preparation. In less than 2 days, the Secretary of Defense would stand on these parade grounds, surrounded by cameras, generals, and men with contracts worth billions. Every weapon, every lock, every soldier was under scrutiny. Security protocol, level 1, nothing overlooked. Except her. Sarah moved in silence under the fluorescent glare, her world reduced to the mechanics of steel and polymer. She had always trusted weapons more than people. Guns didn't lie. Bolts didn't cheat. Firing pins didn't make promises they couldn't keep. Machines spoke honestly in ways men never could. She was 38, hair pulled into a regulation ponytail, uniform pressed so perfectly it almost looked borrowed. She lived in the edges of notice, a woman designed to disappear. A file somewhere said she'd served 3 tidy years as a weapons specialist, after vague, logistical support duties in places with blacked-out names. She wore that fiction like armor. Until now. Sergeant Jason Reed entered the basement like he owned it. His boots slammed on steel grates, the sound of a man who wanted everyone to know he was coming. He dropped a heavy rifle case on her bench, the metallic thud rattling her tools. "Mitchell," he barked, leaning too close. "M82, firing mechanisms jammed, needs to be ready by 0600. She didn't flinch. Her hands kept moving on the M4 carbine she was reassembling, calm, methodical, unhurried. "Put it on the bench, Sergeant," she said evenly. "I'll get to it next." But Reed lingered. He leaned in, smile curling with the kind of condescension she'd seen 100 times from men who thought confidence lived only in their gender. "This isn't just any rifle, Mitchell. Secretary's watching tomorrow. 50 cal anti-material. Range past 1,500 meters. His tone shifted, like a teacher explaining arithmetic to a child. "Think you can handle something with more kick than standard issue?" Finally Sarah looked up. Her eyes, a gray steel that reflected nothing, locked with his. "I'm familiar," she replied flatly. "Semi-auto, 10-round detachable, likely fractured firing pin or carbon buildup. Either way, it'll be ready by morning." His smirk faltered. He walked away, muttering something about perfection, not excuses. She turned to the case. There was more than a weapon. It was a statement. 50 pounds of precision engineering capable of reaching across impossible distances and crushing whatever stood at the other end. Armor, vehicles, human lives. Her hands lifted it as if it weighed nothing. Fingers found latches and pins by instinct. She disassembled it without hesitation, her movements too fluid, too natural for someone who supposedly only maintained rifles. Carbon buildup, yes, enough to jam the firing pin, but there was something else. Reddish sand clung in the bolt's grooves, not Texan dust, foreign, Afghan. Sarah froze. The weapon wasn't fresh from storage, as paperwork claimed. This had seen combat, recently. Her pulse spiked not from fear but from memory, heat shimmering off dunes, desert fatigues rubbing raw skin. The weight of this same weapon pressed against her shoulder. Breath slowed, heartbeat measured, finger caressing a trigger like a lover's cheek. A mile away a man moved. She steadied. She exhaled. She forced the memory back. Her sanctuary was mechanics, steel, function, not the ghosts of sand and blood. She reached for her personal cleaning kit, a worn leather case older than her official service record. It had followed her through places that didn't exist on maps. She unlatched it, and something tumbled out. The sound was small, metal on metal, but it rang in her bones like a bell. A silver medal lay face up, catching the fluorescent light. Engraving glittered sharp. 347 confirmed eliminations. And beneath it, the insignia no outsider should ever recognize, a crosshair with a single star. The mark of Ghost Division. Her hand shot out, covering it. Too late. Across the room, Sergeant Reed leaned in the doorway, watching, expression unreadable. Had he seen? Her fingers slid the metal back into the kit with practiced calm, her face unreadable. But her pulse betrayed her, pounding against ribs like fists on a locked door. She turned back to the rifle. Reed walked away. Nothing said, nothing needed to be. But the walls of her cover had cracked. She cleaned them with movements that betrayed no thought, but her mind spiraled. The ghost, her past, the secret she had buried beneath 12 years of anonymity. She had been more than a weapons tech, more than a forgotten soldier. She had been a legend whispered across deserts, feared in bunkers where men prayed the crosshair never found them. The most lethal American sniper who had ever lived. And someone knew. Far above, General Thomas studied surveillance photographs under fluorescent glare. The Jackal, former Soviet asset, assassin, the man responsible for ambassadors murdered, barracks bombed, governments destabilized, unaligned, unpredictable, a predator who sold his loyalty to the highest bidder. And now, communications suggested he was hunting someone here. His jaw tightened. He had seen ghosts before, not the mythical kind, but the kind his own hand had created. Ghost Division operatives, men and women trained to erase problems from a mile away. Legends who officially never existed. And if the Jackal was here, circling Fort Garrison, it meant only one thing. He was hunting a ghost. In the armory basement, Sarah snapped the back together. Each click, each piece fitting into place, echoed louder than it should. Her cover had lasted 12 years, 347 eliminations, one perfect failure in Baghdad, the child, the hesitation, the shot that wasn't taken, the shot that cost her anonymity. She had walked away after that, buried the ghost, became Sarah Mitchell, weapons tech, nothing more. But now the sand clinging to this told her what she had feared most. The past wasn't finished with her. And outside these walls, the hunt had already begun. Why did General ask about a rifle like a man asking about a memory? He stood in Sarah Mitchell's armory like a storm waiting for thunder, his blue eyes narrowed not at the laid open on her bench, but at her. His weathered hands lifted the weapon, checking its bolt with the ease of someone who'd carried it through nights he never admitted to. This wasn't inspection. This was recognition. "Excellent work," he said finally, "smoother than factory." Sarah nodded, forcing her voice flat. "It's operational, sir." But his gaze stayed on her, searching past her practiced neutrality. "Your file says logistics before maintenance. Where'd you learn rifles like this?" The silence between them stretched. Sarah held steady. "My father was a gunsmith, sir, grew up around it. The army just polished what I already knew." Didn't blink. "Interesting. I once knew a sniper from Montana. Best natural shot I'd ever seen. Strange coincidence." Her pulse flickered, but her breath stayed calm. "The mountains make for good practice, sir. Wind, low humidity, perfect conditions." Studied her for one long, heavy beat. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It caught the light silver sharp. A medal, identical to the one hidden in Sarah's cleaning kit. Same crosshair, same engraving. Her body went cold. His voice was even, but it carried the weight of memory. Only 36 of these were ever awarded. 37, Sarah corrected before she could stop herself. Colonel Harmon, posthumously. His jaw tightened. Frank was a good man, spoke highly of you. The room tilted. This wasn't coincidence, wasn't guessing, he knew. Why are you here, sir? Sarah asked finally. Her voice had changed, harder now, the mask of the armory tech slipping into something sharper. Because you're in danger, he said simply. The Jackal is hunting Ghost Division. 3 operatives dead this year already. Berlin, Singapore, Istanbul, you're next. Her breath stayed steady, but something inside her shifted. A thread snapped, and old instincts rushed back like floodwater. The Jackal failed to eliminate me once, she said. He won't get a second chance. Shook his head. This isn't about pride, he's not working alone. And then the alarm split the silence. A siren wailed across the base, red lights flaring in the armory until shadows twisted like predators. This is not a drill. Security breach, Sector 7. Gunfire followed, sharp bursts echoing closer. Sarah's hands moved before her mind did, locked into its case, M9 drawn from under her bench. She had carried that pistol hidden for 3 years, insurance no one knew about. Now it was in her grip like it had never left. They're coming for me, she said. Or for what you know, countered, his hand finding an old Colt .45 that looked like it belonged to another war. The corridor beyond the armory filled with gunfire, boots, shouts, too close, too professional. They cut power, Sarah muttered as lights flickered once, twice, then died. Only the emergency red glow remained, pulsing like blood through arteries. That's Ghost Division tactics. Someone inside fed them intel. The far door burst open. A figure stormed in black tactical gear, weapon raised. Sarah didn't hesitate. One round to the chest, another to the throat. The man crumpled before he hit the floor. Move, she ordered, dragging toward the emergency exit. Her voice wasn't that of a technician anymore. It was command. It was the ghost. They sprinted down the corridor. Sarah's senses sharpened, every shadow a threat, every echo a map of their hunters. And then he appeared. At the intersection ahead stood a tall figure, lean, moving with liquid precision. His pistol raised, silencer attached. The Jackal. Recognition struck like lightning. His weapon barked first, a hiss more than a shot. Sarah shoved down and rolled, returning 3 rounds center mass. His vest absorbed them. He advanced, firing methodically, pushing them toward a kill zone. Her mind calculated without thought. Angles, distances, timing. Her hand darted to the pouch at her belt, pulling a steel adjustment pen. She hurled it with precision that had ended governments. It struck his throat hard, enough to shock nerves, to stagger him. His shot went wide. She closed distance in 3 strides, colliding with him in brutal silence. His knife flashed from nowhere, slicing for her abdomen. Instead of retreating, she stepped in, trapping his wrist against her ribs, knee slamming into his chest. Air left him in a grunt. Her fingers found his throat, pressing pressure points with surgical cruelty. Their eyes locked, predator against predator. For 3 heartbeats they were bound, neither giving, neither yielding. Then he smiled. "Ghost," he whispered. Backup footsteps pounded behind him. His men were closing in. He broke free with a sharp elbow to her temple, retreating into shadows with inhuman grace. Gone before her eyes adjusted. Sarah steadied herself, blood singing in her ears. Covered the corridor with his Colt, holding back 2 advancing hostiles until they retreated. "That was him," he said, his voice harsh. Sarah nodded, "And he came for me." They fell back into maintenance tunnels, vanishing beneath the base while the firefight roared above. Richard Carter, CIA liaison, arrived minutes later. The intruders had disappeared as suddenly as they came, leaving only bodies behind. 2 dead operators, untraceable gear, no insignia. In the armory, Carter found a workbench abandoned mid-maintenance. The still open, logs written with too much precision for a simple tech. He read the notes, meticulous, detailed, tactical. Not the hand of a mechanic, the hand of an operator. He searched the shadows, and there it was. A silver medal. Crosshair star. The confirmation no one wanted, but everyone feared. Sarah Mitchell was the ghost. And now she was on the run hunted by the jackal himself. The question wasn't whether she could survive. It was why now, after 12 years of silence, the jackal had come for her. And what secret she still carried that was worth killing for. Morning broke across Texas. Sarah sat in interrogation room 3, the walls bare, her hands steady on the table. Outside the window, dawn painted the sky crimson, too much like blood. Carter placed the medal on the table, between them, between truth and lie. 347 confirmed, he said. The ghost, officially never existed, unofficially sitting right here. Sarah said nothing, not yet. The jackal has hunted 3 of your kind already, Carter pressed. Why now? Why you? Her voice, when it came, was not the voice of Sarah Mitchell. It was lower, sharper, the voice of an operator who had buried her conscience years ago. Because I'm the one who got away, she said. Her eyes didn't flinch, and because I know what he's really after. The room held its breath, stared. Carter leaned in. And what's that? Sarah's eyes were steel. The Artemis list, she said. Every deep-cover American operative in the Middle East and former Soviet bloc. Every name, every ghost. If he gets it, they all die. Silence cracked like glass between them. His face was stone. Carter's hand tightened on the file. Sarah leaned forward, voice quieter, colder. And I'm the only one who knows how to stop him. Why did the feel like an old scar in her hands? Sarah sat alone in the ready room, the massive rifle laid across her bench, its steel catching faint fluorescent light. Her fingers worked with practiced calm, stripping and checking every component, but her mind drifted to places she had sworn never to revisit. She had thought she buried the ghost 12 years ago, yet here it was, breathing through her hands, reawakening muscle memory that had never truly died. Entered quietly, not a general's stride, not a commander's weight, just an old soldier walking back into a fight he thought he'd left behind. You'll handle the demonstration, he said simply. Our marksman is dead, and the Secretary of Defense arrives tomorrow. Sarah didn't look up. If I step into that role, the cover's gone. There's no taking it back. His jaw tightened. Your cover is already gone. The jackal made sure of that. She placed this bolt back into its carrier, the metallic click sharp against the silence. Then this isn't about showing a weapon system to politicians. It's about bait. Carter leaned against the doorframe, folder under one arm. You're the only one who can spot him, and the only one he won't be able to resist taking a shot at. Sarah studied him. CIA men always carried themselves like chess players, pieces arranged 3 moves ahead. But his eyes betrayed the fear of someone who had already seen too many pawns fall. You're saying I stand exposed, she said evenly. You're saying you're bait, Carter corrected. For a long moment she said nothing, just the faint clatter of tools as she reassembled the piece by piece, as if reassembling herself. Finally she looked up. Then I want something in return. Raised an eyebrow. Name it. Access to all Ghost Division files. Baghdad 97. Colonel Harmon's notes, everything. Carter frowned. That's not non-negotiable, Sarah cut him off. Her eyes held his like a scope's crosshairs. Harmon didn't die of a heart attack. He was the first ghost eliminated. If I'm walking back into this, I need to know why. The silence was heavy, gave the faintest nod. Granted, you'll have the files before nightfall. Something in Sarah's chest shifted. A quiet ache, half grief, half fury. Harmon had been more than her instructor. He had been the only one who ever reminded her that the shot wasn't about death but about protection. He had believed in her even after she walked away. And if his death had been part of this long game, then the jackal wasn't just hunting her. He was finishing what someone else had started. Major Wilson escorted her to the range that afternoon. His expression was respectful, but his eyes studied her too closely, as if measuring every step, every breath. "You'll have an hour of live fire," he said. "The general wants the rifle zeroed at 800, 1200, and 1500 meters." Sarah gave a curt nod. She knew the real reason. Everyone wanted to see if the ghost still had her edge. She set the on its bipod, adjusted the scope, and settled behind it. The weight fit her shoulder like it never left. Through the glass, the world narrowed to a silhouette target at 800 meters. She slowed her breathing. Heartbeat dropped into rhythm. Wind speed 4 knots. Humidity 36%. Slight mirage in the afternoon heat. Her finger touched the trigger. Pressure built. The world stilled. The shot broke clean. The target's head snapped back, dead center. Another shot, 1200 meters, dead center. Another 1500, perfect again. Wilson watched from the tower, arms folded. To him, it probably looked routine. But Sarah wasn't just firing for accuracy. She was mapping the battlefield, memorizing terrain features, calculating angles, identifying every possible sniper nest within 2 miles. She wasn't practicing. She was planning. Still, she knew one thing. The jackal expected her perfection, which meant perfection would be a mistake. On her next shot, she adjusted for wind deliberately wrong. A subtle error. The round hit inches off center. She let her shoulders stiffen, her posture falter, her expression sour, just long enough for Wilson to see. He'd report it. He'd tell his handler she was rusty, vulnerable, the kind of bait a predator couldn't resist. And she'd make sure of it. That night she sat alone with Harmon's files. The papers smelled faintly of tobacco, the kind he always carried. His handwriting was sharp, deliberate, like his voice had been. One note stopped her cold. Baghdad 97. Intel from source, Petro, former KGB, possible plant. Suspect operation designed to expose ghost methods. Proceeded anyway under pressure from higher command. Sarah leaned back, the chair creaking. So it had been a trap. The jackal hadn't just escaped by chance. He'd been waiting, watching. And when her scope found him that day, when she saw the boy run into his arms, when she hesitated and missed, he had seen her too. Seen her position, her methods, her rhythm. He had been studying her ever since. The thought left her hollow. All those years she thought she'd left the ghost behind. But in truth, the ghost had been under surveillance, living on borrowed time. Her hands brushed the silver medal in her pocket. The numbers etched in it felt heavier tonight. 347 eliminations. Each one a life ended, each one a life supposedly saved. But for the first time, she wondered if the ledger was balanced. Was she protector or weapon? She closed the file, shut off the light, and let the dark answer nothing. Dawn brought clarity, a kind too sharp to ignore. The base stirred with the hum of preparation. The secretary's motorcade was scheduled within hours. Security doubled. Counter-sniper teams deployed on rooftops. Checkpoints tightened like a noose around the installation. To most, it looked impenetrable. To Sarah, it looked like a chessboard. The jackal would see the same weaknesses she did. He'd read the wind through the bleachers, measure the distances through glass, time his shot against applause. And Wilson, if her suspicions were right, would make sure every blind spot stayed open. She prepped the again, her movements slower this time, purposeful. Anyone watching would see tension in her jaw, hesitation in her hands. A woman out of practice, carrying a burden too heavy. But inside, the ghost was awake. Every sense tuned to tomorrow, every nerve waiting for the silence between heartbeats. When entered the ready room, his medals bright against his uniform, He studied her with the same quiet intensity he had always carried. "Everything ready?" he asked. Sarah closed this case. "As ready as it will ever be. Counter teams are in position. Carter has surveillance on Wilson. If he makes contact tonight, we'll know." She gave a small nod. "And if he does?" His jaw tightened. "Then tomorrow, when the secretary steps up to that podium, the jackal will." Sarah rose, the case heavy in her hand. Her eyes didn't waver. "Then tomorrow," she said quietly, "we finish this." But alone, later that night, she stood in her quarters with the medal in her palm. Its silver caught the dim light, the number carved into it unyielding. 347. The world had called her the ghost, had written myths in whispers about her. But to her, every number was a face. Some she still saw clearly. Others had blurred into shadow. Yet all of them pressed weight into the small disk of silver. Tomorrow might add one more. And she knew, with a certainty that burned deeper than fear, that this time there would be no hesitation. Why did the morning feel too perfect? The sky stretched endless blue over Fort Garrison. Wind mild, humidity low, barometric pressure steady. Ideal conditions. Almost too ideal. Sarah felt it the moment she stepped onto the range. The kind of calm that didn't last. The kind of silence that came before thunder. The bleachers were filling with dignitaries, generals, defense contractors. The Secretary of Defense stood near the podium, silver hair sharp against his dark suit, shaking hands with men who had never theirs. Cameras flashed. Guards scanned crowds. It looked like control, but Sarah knew control was an illusion. She was positioned 20 yards from the podium, M82 stretched across a bipod. Her uniform was standard issue, nothing more. To the crowd, she was a faceless technician tasked with a demonstration. To Wilson and the jackal watching through glass somewhere, she was the ghost. And she wanted them to believe the ghost had grown weak. Through her scope, she mapped the terrain. 3 sniper nests possible within a 2-mile radius, the water tower to the north, a warehouse roof to the west, and the scrub hills eastward where the tree line broke. Carter's counter-sniper teams were in place, tucked into shadows, but Sarah knew the jackal would see them. He'd smell the trap. He always had. Moved among the officials with polished ease, his chest of metals catching sunlight. But when his eyes flicked toward her, for just a heartbeat, she saw what was beneath the general's steel, the quiet weight of a man who had commanded too many ghosts. She adjusted the scope, deliberately fumbling once, letting the audience catch her slight hesitation. Wilson watched from the edge of the bleachers, arms folded, his gaze fixed on her like a hawk waiting for prey to stumble. Good. Let him see doubt. Let him report it. His voice rose from the podium, gravel wrapped in authority. Today we demonstrate the precision and reach of America's finest weapon systems. These rifles are not simply machines. They are guardians, extensions of the soldiers who wield them. Sarah felt her chest tighten. Guardians. Harmon's words echoed, "You're not a tool of death, you're an instrument of protection." She lay prone, cheek against the stock, finger brushing the trigger. The first target stood at 800 meters. Easy, too easy. She fired. The round cracked through silence, the target's head erupting into splinters. Applause followed. Second target, 1,200 meters. She allowed her breath to falter. The shot struck inches right of center. Gasps rippled through the bleachers. Wilson's eyebrows lifted. Sarah exhaled sharply, playing the role of someone out of practice. She could almost feel his satisfaction radiate toward her. Third target, 1,500 meters. She steadied, corrected, and fired dead center. The applause returned, more hesitant this time. To the audience, it was impressive. To Wilson, it was exactly what he needed. Confirmation the ghost had grown rusty, vulnerable, predictable. She stepped back, lowering the shoulders tight as though disappointed in herself. Inside, her heartbeat was calm, her mind sharp. The deception was complete. But then something shifted. Through her peripheral vision, Sarah caught the faint glint of sunlight against glass in the eastern hills. Too far for the casual eye, too subtle for anyone untrained. But to her it was unmistakable. A scope. The jackal was in position. She didn't flinch, didn't signal, didn't break character. She leaned into the again, pretending to check adjustments while her trained eye calculated angles. From that ridge, he had line of sight not only to her, but to the secretary's podium. His voice carried across the range, announcing specifications, ranges, capabilities. The kind of polished words that made war sound like math. Sarah's focus narrowed, each detail snapping into clarity. Distance, wind, mirage, trajectory. The jackal was waiting for the perfect moment. Carter's voice crackled in her earpiece. Counter-sniper Team Alpha report. Static answered, then, position compromised, we've got. Gunfire cut the transmission short. Sarah's stomach tightened. The jackal had anticipated them, neutralized one team already. Her finger brushed the trigger guard. She could fire now, take her shot, end it before he made his move. But she hesitated, knowing hesitation could cost lives. If she revealed she had spotted him too soon, he'd vanish again like Baghdad, like the boy. He'd wait and strike later when they were unprepared. Her pulse beat against her jaw. Her choice was clear. Wait, risk the secretary, or act and risk losing him forever. His voice rose. This system represents the pinnacle of American precision engineering. A breath caught in Sarah's throat. She felt it more than saw it, the shift in light, the minute stillness before a trigger breaks. The jackal was about to fire. Her voice cracked into the comms, low and sharp. Target, Eastern Ridge, glass reflection, he said. Carter barked orders, teams scrambled, but Sarah was already moving. Her swung to the ridge, crosshairs settling on the faint shadow hidden among scrub. For a heartbeat she saw him, the jackal, calm, focused, his rifle angled toward the secretary's podium. Their eyes met through glass and distance. Predator and prey, hunter and hunted, bound again after 12 years. Her finger squeezed. The roared. The figure on the ridge shifted, staggered, but didn't fall. He rolled instantly, vanishing from sight as if the earth swallowed him. Chaos erupted. Agents swarmed the secretary, pulling him down. Dignitaries screamed. Gunfire crackled from the hills as Carter's teams engaged unseen shooters. Sarah chambered another round, scanning, but the jackal was gone. Again. Through the smoke of panic, she caught Wilson's face. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't confused. He was calm, too calm. His hand brushed the side of his leg, 3 fingers tapping in rhythm. Morse code. JAC. Jackal. The realization struck like the recoil of her rifle. Wilson wasn't just feeding information. He was directing the hunt. Her scope swung back to the podium. The secretary was alive. Stood firm, Colt drawn, eyes sweeping for threats. The chaos was controlled, but the danger wasn't over. Sarah rose from her position, in hand. She moved like a shadow through the scrambling crowd, her eyes fixed on Wilson. He looked back once, and for the first time his expression cracked, not fear, recognition. The mole had been found. But the jackal was still out there, watching, waiting. And Sarah knew, the next shot wouldn't be at the secretary. It would be at her. Why did silence feel louder than the gunfire had? The bleachers were half empty now, civilians evacuated, dignitaries hustled into armored convoys that tore out of Fort Garrison like hunted prey. Sirens still wailed. Agents barked orders. Dust lingered in the air. Sarah stood with the cradled against her shoulder, scanning the ridges where the jackal had vanished. No sign, just scrub brush swaying under a steady wind, the perfect stage for a ghost to disappear. Her pulse slowed, but the ache in her chest didn't fade. She had taken the shot. She had seen him stagger, but not fall. The jackal never fell. Moved through the chaos with calm authority, shouting orders into a radio. Seal the perimeter. Lock every gate. No one leaves without clearance. I want counter-sniper teams sweeping every high point within 5 miles. Carter approached, his suit rumpled, his tie loose, sweat running down his temple. His eyes found Sarah. "You saw him." Her voice was low, steady. "He's alive." "You hit him." "Yes, shoulder. He'll favor the arm, but it won't stop him." Carter cursed under his breath. That man, been bleeding for 30 years, won't make him any slower. Sarah finally lowered the. She turned her head slightly, scanning the field. Wilson stood near a cluster of soldiers, giving orders, his voice crisp, his gestures confident. To everyone else, he looked like a professional doing his job. But Sarah saw the truth. The rhythm of his tapping fingers, the flicker of recognition when their eyes had locked, the subtle calm of a man who already knew how this day would end. Her stomach turned with a bitter weight. She'd killed men for less proof. And yet, staring at Wilson, she hesitated. Not because she doubted herself, but because she had seen this before. In Baghdad, in Istanbul, in every op where betrayal rotted the mission from within. The ghost didn't hesitate, but Sarah Mitchell did. And that was the crack the jackal kept aiming for. Hours later, Fort Garrison sat under lockdown. Black Hawks hovered overhead, spotlights sweeping. Every soldier checked, rechecked, questioned. The kind of suffocating scrutiny that made even the innocent sweat. Sarah sat in the debrief room, the resting in its case against the wall. Carter paced, agitation etched deep into his features. Sat silent, his hand resting near his holstered Colt, as if expecting the walls themselves to draw a knife. "You don't understand," Carter snapped. "The jackal isn't just hunting her. He's dismantling our entire network. Istanbul, Berlin, Singapore. He knew where they were, how they moved, who they trusted. That doesn't happen without an inside channel." His voice was low, steady. "You think Wilson's the leak?" "I don't think," Carter said. "I know. He's had access to ghost files since his promotion last year. He's worked every perimeter detail for the secretary's visits. And somehow, the jackal always stays one step ahead." Sarah finally spoke. Her voice was quiet but sharper than a blade. "I saw him signaling, Morse, spelling the jackal's name." The room stilled. Carter froze mid-step, jaw tightened. "That's enough for me," the general said. But Sarah shook her head. "It's not enough for court-martial, not enough for the secretary's office. They'll bury it under red tape until it's too late. If Wilson is the mole, the jackal still needs him alive, which means—" She trailed off. A realization struck her like recoil. "Which means the jackal will try again tonight." Carter frowned. "You're saying he won't run?" Sarah's eyes were steel. "He doesn't run, he circles back, always." Leaned forward. "Then we give him a reason to circle." Sarah glanced at her reflection in the steel looked older than she remembered, more haunted. "What reason?" she asked. "Same one as today," said you. That night Fort Garrison felt like a stage waiting for its final act. Floodlights lit the grounds. Patrols walked in tight patterns. The base looked impenetrable, which made it the perfect illusion. Sarah stood at the center of it, a silhouette under harsh light, the setup on sandbags. To anyone watching from the hills, she was a perfect target, vulnerable, alone. But she wasn't alone, and Carter monitored from the command post. Counter-sniper teams were hidden deeper this time, not on rooftops but dug into ground positions. Every camera, every thermal scope trained outward. Still, Sarah knew better. The jackal wasn't afraid of cameras. He was a shadow among shadows. He would find the crack no one else saw. She settled behind the cheek pressed to the stock, eyes scanning through the scope. The hills loomed dark, the tree line swaying in wind. Her heartbeat slowed. She remembered Harmon's voice, steady in her ear all those years ago. Patience isn't waiting. It's knowing when not to shoot. Minutes bled into an hour. Sweat cooled on her neck. Every sound sharpened. The hum of generators, the crunch of boots, the faint static of her comms. Then she felt it. Not saw, not heard, felt. The weight of being watched. Her scope shifted. For a fraction of a second she caught it, the faintest shimmer of glass deep in the tree line, the same angle as before, same patience. Her finger brushed the trigger. But then, movement at the edge of her sight. Wilson. He was outside his assigned post, walking casually toward the far fence line. Too casual, too smooth, as if guided by someone unseen. Her stomach tightened. It was the handoff. Wilson was about to pass something. "Command, this is Mitchell," she whispered into comms. "Wilson's off post, eastern fence line, he's making contact." Static crackled, then Carter's voice. "Do not engage. Repeat, do not engage. We need him alive for intel." Her jaw clenched. She kept her scope trained. Wilson paused near the fence, and there a hand reached through the chain links, gloved. The jackal. The briefest exchange, a small flash drive passed between shadows. Sarah's heartbeat thundered. The Artemis list. It had to be. She exhaled, finger tightening on the trigger. She had a clean shot. The ghost would take it, end it here. But Sarah Mitchell hesitated. Her finger froze. The boy in Baghdad. The hesitation that had birthed 12 years of exile. It came back, crushing her chest like a weight. Wilson turned, slipping the drive into his pocket. The hand vanished. The jackal melted into darkness. And Sarah hadn't fired. Minutes later, the command post erupted. Carter slammed his fist into the console. "Damn it, Mitchell, you had him." Her voice was ice. "I didn't have him, not clean. He was half-shielded. If I fired, Wilson would be dead and the drive lost. The secretary's office would call it murder." His eyes held hers, unflinching. "But now he has the list." Her chest felt hollow. "Now he has the ghosts." The room went quiet. Every name, every operator, every buried identity at risk. Men and women who had lived invisible, now walking with targets painted on their backs. Carter turned to, "We can't contain this, if that drive leaves the country." "It won't," Sarah interrupted. They both stared at her. She stood, shoulders squared, her voice flat, almost calm. "He's not running, he's drawing me out. He wants the ghost in the open. Fine." Her hand rested on this case. "Then we finish this on my terms." But alone, later that night, Sarah sat on her bunk staring at the silver medal in her palm. 347 confirmed eliminations. And one hesitation that haunted every number. She turned the medal over, the weight of it pressing into her skin. For the first time, she whispered to the empty room, "Maybe it was never about how many I killed. Maybe it's about the one I didn't." The silence answered nothing. But in her chest the ghost stirred. And Sarah Mitchell knew, before this ended, either she or the jackal would become number 348. Why did the night outside the wire feel quieter than death itself? The convoy that should have taken Sarah out under protection never left. She refused it. She told Carter plainly, "If I move with a unit, he'll smell it. If I move alone, he'll come for me." So she walked into the dark with Thea on her back, M9 at her hip, and Silence her only companion. The land stretched endless under a half-moon sky, scrub and dust and ridges like scars on the earth. She had hunted men in terrain like this before, and been hunted. But tonight felt different. This wasn't an op sanctioned in briefing rooms. This wasn't a mission where the objective came on paper. This was unfinished business. This was her past finally demanding its payment. Every step forward was a step back into the ghost's skin. She paused at a rise overlooking the valley. The wind was steady. No dogs barking. No engines in the distance. Just the sound of her own breath. That was the danger, silence so pure it meant someone else was shaping it. The jackal was near. She dropped to a crouch, sliding into position, scope sweeping the tree line. The glass pulled the world closer, every shadow a potential threat. And then she saw it, the faint shimmer of infrared at the base of the ridge, too deliberate, not natural. Tripwires. He was guiding her, drawing her into his kill box. Her jaw tightened. The smart move was to withdraw, bring fire teams to sweep the ridge. But Sarah Mitchell wasn't just here for survival. She was here to end 12 years of running. She marked the wires, found the pattern, crawled low and slipped past. Each movement measured. Each breath counted. She had lived her life this way once, and it came back now as though no time had passed. Halfway through the tree line, the voice came. Not in her ear, not in comms, from the shadows themselves. You hesitate the same way you breathe, Ghost. Her pulse spiked, but her aim stayed steady. The jackal stepped into faint moonlight, tall and lean, his face carved by decades of war. His left shoulder was wrapped in a dark bandage where her bullet had grazed him. His rifle hung casually in one hand, as though weight meant nothing. He smiled, not wide, just enough. Istanbul, Berlin, Singapore. You were always a step behind, weren't you? And still you think you're hunting me. Sarah's voice was low, sharp. You've been hunting me since Baghdad. He tilted his head. Because you didn't take the shot, the boy, I wondered if it was weakness or choice. Her stomach turned, the memory clawing up her chest, heat shimmering off dunes, a boy's face blurred by distance, a hesitation that shattered her name, her myth, her life. His eyes narrowed. That was the day I knew you weren't a ghost, you were still human. Her finger brushed the trigger, but she didn't fire. Not yet. You killed Harmon, she said. I didn't have to, the jackal replied. Your own command did. He knew too much. The Artemis list didn't begin with me, Ghost. It began with your people. I just inherited it. Her chest tightened. You're lying. Am I? His smile sharpened. Why do you think they hid you as a maintenance tech for 12 years? To protect you, or to bury you? His words cut deeper than she wanted to admit, but she locked it down. Not here, not now. You want the list, she said, but you came for me. Because you're the last piece, he said softly. You are the story that has to end, the ghost who became myth. If I kill you, the others will scatter. The Artemis list becomes mine to sell. No more legends, just numbers. His rifle lifted. Her scope found his chest at the same instant. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to two hunters staring down barrels, the space between them heavier than gravity. But before either fired, a third voice shattered the silence. Enough. Wilson. He emerged from the shadows behind Sarah, weapon raised. His face was taut, jaw clenched, sweat shining under moonlight. You don't shoot her, Wilson snapped at the jackal. She's mine. Sarah pivoted slightly, keeping them both in view. So the mole finally steps into the light. Wilson's eyes burned. I didn't sell you out, Mitchell. I freed myself. Ghost Division made us all disposable. At least the jackal pays in more than medals and graves. The jackal did lower his weapon. His voice was almost amused. And yet here you are, standing between me and her, curious. Wilson's hand shook just enough to betray the truth. He wasn't in control. He wanted to believe he was, but he was. Sarah's heartbeat slowed. 3 predators in a triangle, tension stretched thin enough to break with a breath. She broke the silence first. You think you're free, Wilson. You're just another name on his list. The moment you're no use, you'll vanish like the rest. Wilson's face twisted, anger and fear colliding. His finger twitched on the trigger. The jackal moved first. His shot cracked through night, aimed not at Sarah but at Wilson. The bullet took Wilson in the chest. He staggered back, shock etched across his face as blood spread dark. His weapon clattered to dirt. Sarah's instinct snapped. Her finger squeezed, the roared, and her round ripped into the jackal's side, spinning him back into the tree line. He vanished into shadows with inhuman speed, even wounded. Wilson collapsed to the ground, choking, gasping. His eyes found Sarah. For a moment the anger was gone, only regret remained. They promised I'd matter, he rasped. Sarah knelt beside him, her hand pressing to his wound. though both knew it was pointless. "You did matter," she said softly. "You just chose the wrong side." His eyes glazed, his last breath left in a whisper. And then he was gone. Sarah sat back on her heels, her chest hollow. Another number, another ghost. But the jackal was still out there, wounded, alive, waiting. She rose slowly, heavy in her hands, eyes scanning the shadows where he had fled. Her voice was steady, a whisper to the night itself. "This doesn't end with him hunting me. It ends with me hunting him." Back at Fort Garrison, Carter slammed his hands against the command table. "You let him get away again." Sarah's eyes were steel. "I wounded him, he'll bleed, he'll hide, but he won't run far, not until it's finished." Studied her silent, his expression unreadable, but his gaze carried something almost like respect. "Where?" he asked. Sarah exhaled slowly. "Baghdad, where it started. He'll want me to finish it where I failed." Carter shook his head. "That's not strategy, that's obsession." Sarah's eyes didn't waver. "For him, there's no difference." She picked up this case, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the door. "Then we go back to the desert," she said quietly. "And only one of us comes back." Why did returning feel like betrayal? The wheels of the transport touched down with a shudder, and the heat of Baghdad rushed in through the open ramp like an old enemy. Sand, smoke, that smell of dust mixed with diesel and sweat. It hadn't changed. Sarah stepped onto the tarmac with this case slung over her shoulder. For 12 years she had avoided this place, buried it in silence. Now she was back, not as Sarah Mitchell, the anonymous tech, but as the ghost dragged unwilling into daylight. Came down behind her, Carter close at his side. A convoy of armored vehicles idled, their engines rumbling, waiting to escort them through streets that had once been a battlefield and now pretended to be stable. But Sarah knew better. Some cities never heal, they just bleed slower. Carter broke the silence first. "We've traced the signal from Wilson's flash drive. Encrypted files already passed to a buyer. Location leads here. The jackal's arranging the sale in 48 hours. "Who's the buyer?" asked. Carter's jaw tightened. "A coalition of former contractors, mercenary syndicates with enough reach to destabilize half the region. If they get the Artemis list," he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Every ghost would be exposed. Sarah kept her eyes forward. "It's not about the list anymore. He's staging this here because of me. Baghdad is the unfinished shot, the place I hesitated." Studied her but didn't argue. He knew she was right. They loaded into the convoy. The city rolled past, narrow streets, shattered walls still pockmarked from firefights, children running barefoot, eyes both curious and hardened. Sarah watched in silence, memories bleeding in with every turn. A rooftop, a minaret, a market square. She remembered them all, the places where she had lain prone, waiting for orders, the voices in her ear, the count of her breathing before she pulled the trigger. And then the rooftop where she hadn't fired. Her hand brushed the metal in her pocket. 347 engraved numbers pressed into silver, but it was the missing number that owned her. They set up in a safe house at the edge of the old city. Cement walls, sandbags at windows, radios buzzing with encrypted chatter. The lay across a table, its parts spread out like an autopsy. Sarah cleaned each piece slowly, methodically, as if the act itself could calm the storm in her chest. Entered carrying a folder. He set it down beside her. "Intel from Harmon's files you asked for, the part we didn't show you at Fort Garrison." Sarah froze, then looked at him. His face was drawn tight, his eyes heavy. She opened the folder. Inside, pages of transcripts, orders from higher command, a line written in bold, stamped classified. Subject: Mitchell reassigned. Reason: hesitation observed. Compromise of ghost operational standard. Recommendation: burial via cover identity. Her throat tightened. The betrayal was there in black ink, not protection, disposal. voice was quiet. "I argued against it. They said you were broken, that a ghost who hesitates is no ghost at all. I knew better, but Harmon was already gone, and without him I didn't have the leverage to save you." Sarah's hands trembled against the pages. She forced them still. "So they hid me," she said flatly, "made me disappear, not because I failed, but because I reminded them we're still human." Met her eyes. For a long moment there was only silence. Then he said, "The Jackal's wrong about many things, but not that. It was your humanity that made you dangerous. They feared it more than your rifle." Her chest ached, equal parts grief and fury. Carter entered, cutting through the moment. "We have movement. Jackal's people are setting up in the old financial district. Abandoned rooftops, clear lines of sight. Sale going down tomorrow night." Sarah stood, reassembling in swift, sure motions. "Then tomorrow we finish it." That night sleep didn't come. She sat on the rooftop of the safe house, looking over the city lit faint by broken neon and scattered lamps. Her hands rested on the metal in her pocket pressing into her side. Her mind drifted, not to the Jackal, not to Wilson, not even to Harmon. To the boy. She saw him as clearly now as she had 12 years ago. Small frame, clothes hanging loose, eyes too old for his age. Running into the Jackal's arms just as she'd lined up the shot. Her finger froze. Her chest seized, and she couldn't fire. That boy's face had haunted every trigger pull since. Was he alive now, grown into a man somewhere in this city? Or had he become just another name on someone else's list? She whispered into the night, "Did I save you or damn you?" The city gave no answer. But the silence in her chest shifted, and for the first time in years she realized something. She didn't regret the hesitation. She regretted what it cost her, but she did not regret the choice itself. Maybe that was the difference between Sarah Mitchell and the ghost. The next evening came fast. The financial district was a skeleton of glass and steel, bombed and abandoned, its hollow towers like teeth in the desert sky. Perfect ground for predators. Sarah moved with and Carter through the empty streets, every step echoing. Her rested against her shoulder, a weight that no longer felt foreign. Carter whispered, "We have satellite confirmation. The Jackal's inside the tower at the center, top floor. He's using it as his nest. Buyers are inbound." Sarah scanned the windows. Dark, broken glass reflected faint moonlight. It was a labyrinth of angles and shadows, a sniper's dream and a sniper's grave. Put a hand on her shoulder. "We can send in a team. You don't have to go in first." Sarah shook her head. "He's not here for them, he's here for me. Sending a team only gets them killed." Carter looked ready to argue but stopped him. "She's right. He's been circling her for 12 years. This ends with the two of them." Sarah met the general's eyes. "And when it does, make sure the Artemis list never sees daylight." Gave a single nod, not as a commander, as a man who understood the weight of ghosts. She turned in hand and began the climb into the tower. The stairwell was a tomb. Dust clung to each step, graffiti the walls. The air grew thinner as she rose, her breath echoing louder than she wanted. Every landing felt like a memory. She remembered Baghdad rooftops, Harmon's voice guiding her, the boy running. Every floor was another ghost pressing in. At the final flight she stopped. Her hand brushed the metal in her pocket. She whispered to herself, "Not a number, not a myth, just me." And she pushed the door open. The top floor stretched wide, broken windows letting moonlight flood across cracked tiles. The city sprawled beneath, silent, waiting. At the far end the Jackal stood, his rifle already raised. "Welcome home, ghost," he said softly. Sarah's pulse slowed. She raised the... And in that breathless silence she knew, one of them would not leave this floor alive. Why did silence feel heavier than the rifle in her hands? The tower floor was wide and broken, lit only by moonlight spilling through jagged glass. Dust hung like fog. Somewhere below, Baghdad moved with its usual restless life, but up here time slowed to a single breath. Sarah's was shouldered, her eye locked through glass, crosshairs steady. Across the ruin, the jackal stood poised, his own rifle leveled. They were mirrors, predator to predator, patient as stone, deadly as silence. He smiled faintly. 12 years, and still you hesitate. Her finger rested on the trigger, steady, unmoving. I don't hesitate, I choose. His eyes narrowed. Choice is weakness, you should have learned that. She exhaled slowly, heartbeat measured, body still as iron. But her chest burned with everything he had taken, Harmon, Wilson, her own name. And yet beneath that, deeper, she felt the boy's face. That single moment when she refused to trade innocence for myth. It wasn't weakness. It had never been weakness. She spoke, voice low but sharp. That's what you never understood. Being human doesn't make me weak. It makes me dangerous. The jackal's smile flickered. His finger twitched. The shots broke almost as one. His round shattered glass inches from her shoulder, cutting air with heat. Her roared, the recoil slamming into her bones. She saw his body jerk, the bullet tearing into his chest. He staggered but didn't fall. He shifted, almost laughing, blood soaking his shirt. You're still too late. He swung his rifle toward the stairwell. Her pulse spiked. Carter, the buyers. He wasn't aiming for her, he was aiming to take as many as he could before death swallowed him. Sarah's breath froze. She didn't have time to reload. This recoil had lifted her. So she dropped it. Her hand pulled the M9 from her hip, faster, sharper than thought. The pistol barked once, twice, 3 times. The jackal's chest snapped back. His rifle clattered to stone. For a moment he stood, swaying, the myth refusing to fall. Then his knees buckled, and he dropped to the floor, the silence of his collapse louder than his gunfire had ever been. Sarah stood still, the M9 steady in her hands until the last breath left his body. Only then did she lower it. And Carter burst through the stairwell seconds later, weapons raised. They froze at the sight. The jackal's body sprawled in moonlight, crimson spreading dark across the cracked tiles. Sarah stood over him, chest heaving, eyes hollow. Carter's voice was rough. Is it done? Sarah didn't look away from the body. It's done. Stepped closer, his eyes on her rather than the corpse. And you. She exhaled, shoulders heavy. For 12 years she had carried a myth that wasn't hers. A silence forced on her by men who called her broken. A number carved into silver as if life could be reduced to tallies. And now she felt none of it lift, only the weight of what remained. I'm not the ghost anymore, she said quietly. I never was. Back at the safe house, Carter decrypted the stolen drive. Lines of names scrolled across screens, operators buried in shadows, missions that had never existed. Artemis laid bare. Carter's hands trembled. If this had sold. It didn't, Sarah cut him off. Her voice was flat. Burn it, every copy ended here. Studied her, and what about you? Sarah pulled the metal from her pocket. The silver disc gleamed faint under the safe house lights, the number 347 etched sharp. She set it down on the table. Let them bury the ghost, she said. The myth doesn't matter anymore. Carter frowned, and Sarah Mitchell. Her eyes were tired but clear. She goes home. The flight back was quiet. Baghdad's lights faded behind them, swallowed by desert night. Sarah sat by the window, her reflection staring back at her. For the first time in years, she saw only herself. Not the ghost, not a myth, just a soldier who had chosen to live with what she had done and what she hadn't. Sat across the aisle watching her. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Between them, silence finally felt like peace instead of punishment. Weeks later, Sarah stood in her small house stateside, the locked away, uniforms folded into a trunk. The medal was gone. She looked out the window at children playing in the street, their laughter sharp in the air. The sound tugged at her chest, not grief, not regret, something softer. She whispered to herself, almost like a prayer. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And for the first time in 12 years, Sarah Mitchell allowed herself to believe she was free.